The House will please be in order. Those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and all members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the gentleman, the 28th Doggett Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Almighty Father in heaven, we thank you for this wonderful day. We thank you for the beautiful weather. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together in this building, Father, to debate the people's business. We ask that you might pour out your wisdom upon us, Father, that you might heap it out in buckets so that we might do the people's business according to your will. Father, we ask that you might be with us this day, that you might extend your watch care over us. It's through Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the gentleman, the 67th Delegate Doyle. Is he here? By the lady in the 49th Delegate Summers.
If everyone would please join us as we pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Friday, January 31st, 2020.
Lady in the 32nd, Doug Kessinger.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
The lady in the 32nd asks unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Introduction of guests. Introduction of guests. The gentleman, the 44th, Doug HANNA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two introductions this morning, if the House would bear with me, please. To start off, from Richwood High School, we have some students from RALEIGH, West Virginia. If they would please stand when I call their names. Riley Shin, Hannah and Rihanna Green, Trinity Amick, Sarah Casto, Brycey Hamrick, Sydney Cow, Kaylee Snyder, and Kaylee Garrettson. And they are accompanied today by their teacher, Carrie Mullins, former teacher of my own, I must say. But if the House would make them feel welcome. And then additionally, Mr. Speaker, I have my Fraser Singleton intern with me today. His name is Alex Brugos. If he would please stand. He's a senior at Bluefield State, and his major is business. And as tradition, my intern is always older than I am, so he's got me by 1 year this year. But if the House would make him feel welcome.
Gentleman, the 13th, Doug Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a page here with us today. Braxton Smith, who attends Hayes Middle School. If Braxton would please stand up. Please make him feel welcome all the way from the beautiful town of St. Albans, West Virginia.
The gentleman, the 29th, Delegate Steele. Delegate Steele. The lady in the 57th, Delegate Rowan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From West Virginia's oldest county, we have some very special guests. The new owners of the Potomac Eagle, Celeste and Robert Franz, are with us today. If they would please stand and the House give them a wide and wonderful West Virginia welcome.
The gentleman, the 34th, Delegate Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very, very happy and excited today to introduce two of my grandkids from West Hayes Elementary School, 5th graders. Kenzie Boggs, Kenzie's on this side, and Carson Boggs on the other side. If they would both stand, introduce them on behalf of myself, the gentleman from the 15th, and my wife Jean in the gallery.
The gentleman, the 17th, Delegate Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to introduce Ethan Lauhart, who is a student at West Virginia State and is a Fraser Singleton intern with me for the week. And if the House would make them welcome.
The gentleman, the 24th, Delegate Tomlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On On behalf of myself, Delegate Rodriguez of Maynard, I'd like to introduce a few pages, if they'd stand up as I announce their name. From Chapmanville Intermediate, Jackson Dingus, Ayla Vance, Joyce Richards, Jordan Witt, Addie Farley, and Connor Williamson. If everybody would make them welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 29th, Douglas Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With us today from West Virginians for Health Freedom are Rachel Clark, Kevin Foster, Amy Foster, Gunnar Foster, Louisa Foster, Felicity Foster, Adelhe Foster, Calissa Foster, and Garrett Foster, Kelsey and Kevin Mitchum, Jennifer and Alan Cummings, Karen, Kaylee, Levi, and Mason Polk, Jody, Kayla, and Austin Holcomb. If the House can make them feel welcome.
The gentleman, the second, Douglas DeSerio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an introduction today of my Fraser Singleton for the week. She's a senior at WVU, majoring in political science and women in gender studies, and a minor in communication. She's getting ready to take her LSAT soon, and my youngest of my three daughters, Carly DeSerio, if you'd help me make her welcome.
The gentleman, the 37th, Douglas Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the South Gallery, we are joined by Mr. Atticus Hatfield, who is on leave from Harvard University, which is a small school up in Massachusetts, and he is going to be helping out from now until the end of the session. And if you would please make him feel welcome, Atticus Hatfield.
The lady in the 51st, Douglas Walker.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like for the House to give a warm welcome to one of my dear friends, Tiffany Samuels from Marion County, and also her colleague, Corey Chambers, who is applying for cultivation and dispensary license for medical marijuana. Can the House please give them a warm welcome?
The gentleman, the 22nd, Douglas Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With us today, paging from Chapmanville Grade School, is Katie Barker. Would Katie please stand? She's also escorted by her mother and father, Jill Barker, and former delegate Josh Barker. Would they please stand? Will the House please make them feel welcome?
The gentleman, the 24th, Douglas Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Tomlin and myself, we also have pages from Chapmanville Intermediate Grade School. With us, we have Destiny Ellis, we have Brooklyn Smith, we have Jay Kainer, Jeffrey Baisden, Allison Laws, Lincoln Garton, Raylan Akers, Emma McNeely, Cooper, Paris, it looks like. Would the floors please make them welcome? Thank you.
The lady in the 51st, Douglas Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am happy to welcome my Fraser Singleton intern today, Ariana Islam. She's from Marion County. She's studying at the great university, West Virginia University, and she is a political science major. Would all the delegates please make her welcome?
Are there other introductions? If not, report to standing committees.
Your Committee on Political Subdivisions has had under consideration House Bill 2605 relating to the regular election of officers on state general election day. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 4352 removing the use of post-criminal conduct in professional and occupational initial licensure or certification in decision-making. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 4380, updating the Regulatory Board review schedule. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 4509, transferring the Parole Board to the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation for purposes of administrative and other support. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received. Are there further reports standing committees? If not, reports of select committees. Messages from the executive, messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of committee substitute for Senate Bill 449, authorizing the Department of Commerce promulgate legislative rules.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 550, permitting leashed dogs track mortally wounded deer or bear.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 642, correcting incorrect code citation in West Virginia Consumer Credit and Protection Act.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 53, United States Army Air Corps Tech Sergeant Ralph H. Ray Memorial Bridge.
Laid in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 4645, establishing the Office of Regulatory and Fiscal Affairs under the Joint Committee on Government and Finance.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady from the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3049, improving dissemination of boiled water advisories to affected communities.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman from the 41st, Douglas Hill, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill requires certain entities be contacted when a boiled water advisory is issued and removed. Currently, DHHR has adopted the federal rule on who should be contacted with a boil water advisory. This bill would require the water utility or the PSD to contact the local health department and local 911 answering point by July 1, 2020 when issuing and removing a boil water advisory. Then by July 1, 2021, the water utility or PSD shall contact its customers by text or voice alert mass notification system. These contacts are currently permitted but not required. This change will make those notifications mandatory. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to passage of the bill? If none, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3049.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4484 relating to the Hazardous Waste Management Fund.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Kelly, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Hazardous Waste Management Act creates the Hazardous Waste Management Fund, which is used to regulate and manage hazardous waste throughout the state. The Act creates an annual certification fee for facilities that generate and store hazardous waste. The fee generated by the Act are matched by federal grants which support the program. DEP uses the fund to regulate companies that generate hazardous waste within the state Within the state, there are currently 3,357 companies that are classified as generators of hazardous waste. DEP inspects the facilities to be sure that waste is stored properly and for no longer than the federal government allows. DEP ensures that the waste is picked up by a registered transporter of hazardous waste and sent to a proper disposal facility for the type of waste that they have. Without the fee and matching funds, DEP could potentially lose primacy, and the EPA would take over the regulation of hazardous waste in the state of West Virginia. Without legislation, the fee and the fund will terminate on June 30th, 2020. As a result, the state will lose the federal matching funds. Fees generated are about $700,000 in annual revenue, which allows the state to receive $1.630 million annually in matching funds. The bill extends the program through June 30th, 2025. There are no other charges. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 1 nay, and 4 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4484.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4600 relating to the definition of the term member regarding distributing premium tax proceeds.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The lady from the 38th, Delegate Graves, to explain the bill. Ladies and gentlemen, does the chair hear objection to moving consideration of House Bill 4600 at the foot of all bills? Chair hears no objection. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4601 relating to distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal firemen and policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds.
Again, does the chair hear objection to moving consideration of House Bill 4601 at the foot of all bills? The chair hears no objection. Both bills will be considered at the foot of all bills. Are there further bills on third reading? If none, then bills on second reading.
House Bill 2164 clarifying that appeals to the Supreme Court are a matter of right.
Are there amendments? No. If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2892, including digital and virtual information in the definition of property that can be searched and seized by a warrant.
Are there amendments?
No.
If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4001.
Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be advanced to third reading with the amendment pending and the general right to amend.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that consideration of committee substitute for House Bill 4001 be advanced to third reading with the amendment pending and the general right to amend. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. The bill will be so advanced. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4102 relating to opioid antagonists.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4137 allowing counties to store and maintain voter registration records in digital format.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4356 relating to the administration of anesthetics.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Hill moves to amend the bill on page 1, line 20 by striking the word surgeon and inserting the word physician.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. The gentleman from the 41st, Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is just a technical correction to make the language in the bill consistent throughout. I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and the chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4412 relating to education benefits to members of the West Virginia Army National Guard and West Virginia Air National Guard.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4434, West Virginia Healthcare Workforce Sustainability Study.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Hill moves to amend the bill on page 1 by striking everything after the enacting clause and inserting in lieu thereof the following.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman, the 41st, Delegate Hill, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment adds additional topics for the study, including professionals who are leaving their profession, breaks out different types and facilities, and add a couple of professions which were left out. I urge adoption.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just explained by the gentleman, the 41st. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, then the question is on adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of adoption will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 311 relating to court-ordered community service.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 357 authorizing the Department of Revenue to promulgate legislative rules.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2967 permitting the county to retain the excise taxes for the privilege of transferring title of real estate.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4090 creating the oil and gas abandoned well plugging fund.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4161 making it illegal to sclerotattoo a person.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4375 speech language pathologists and audiologists compact.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4378 relating to disciplining teachers.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4395 removing the requirement that a veterinarian access and report the Controlled Substance Monitoring Database.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4410 permitting directors and executive officers of a banking institution to borrow from a banking institution with which he or she is connected.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4414 relating to the selection of language and development milestones for the deaf and hard of hearing children.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4415 relating to missing and endangered children.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4438 relating to the licensing of advanced deposit wagering.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4559 modifying limitations on civil actions against the perpetrator of sexual assault or sexual abuse upon a minor.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, ladies and gentlemen, the House will return now to consideration of bills on third reading. Let's begin now with House Bill 4600. Lady from the 38th, Doug Graves, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill would amend the provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to the calculation of the distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal policemen and firemen's pension plans. Current policy of the Municipal Pensions Oversight Board is to count the surviving spouse or one surviving dependent receiving benefits from a municipal plan when determining the distribution of the premium tax proceeds to the various municipal plans. This bill would just state specifically that they are to be counted. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If none, those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, and chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4600.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Graves moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment as just read by the clerk. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4601 relating to distribution of premium tax proceeds to municipal policemen's and firemen's pension and relief funds.
There are objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read. The chair hears none, recognizes the gentleman from the 35th, Doug Nelson, to explain the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4601 comes to us at the request of the Municipal Pension Oversight Board. The bill would amend provisions in code by amending the provisions related to the Deferred Retirement Option Plans, also known as DROP, for members of the municipal policeman or fireman's pension and relief funds. Currently, this pertains to really one city at Wheeling right now. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4601.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Does the chair hear objection to the return to further consideration of House Bill 4600 for purposes of a title amendment? Never mind. Leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, delegates Capito, Hamrick, Hardy, and Storch.
Does the chair hear objection to leaves of absence being granted? Chair hears no objections and leaves shall be granted. Remarks by members? Remarks by members. The gentleman from the 44th, Doug HANNA.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, we got word from FEMA and the governor's office that Nicholas County schools were awarded $132 million from FEMA to start reconstruction of the schools we lost in the 2016 flood. After the state match, that's about $176 million total to build 2 schools. Well, there was an article in the Gazette that stated when they reached out to the Nicholas County School Superintendent, Donna Burge-Tetrick, she declined Friday to give even a ballpark estimate of the budget for each school. Well, I am thrilled, Mr. Speaker, that we have finally made some headway on this issue and that we're finally going to make some progress after 4 years to get these kids out of trailers and into a permanent building. I still have the question of where's this money going to go? Because if we look back at conceptual plans from 2018, we see that of the $176 million, $150 would go to a facility on the western side of the county to replace one school that was destroyed in the 2016 flood, as well as Nicholas County High School, and to move the vocational center from the eastern side of the county to the western side of the county. And I will note that the last 2 schools I just mentioned were not affected at all by the 2016 flood. Now, however, on the eastern side of the county, the part that I represent, Richwood High School was destroyed in the 2016 flood, as well as Richwood Middle School. And we're going to spend $30 or $20 million of the money that we get from FEMA to build a K-12 onto an existing elementary school in Richwood. Now, I stated in the Gazette article when they asked me last week, how do you feel about this situation? We're going to build a Taj Mahal on one side of the county, and we're not even going to build a hallway on the other, Mr. Speaker. It upsets me. It very much upsets me. Because if this situation was just done right to start with, if the Board of Education and the superintendent would have listened to input from the community to start with, this wouldn't be a problem. On one side of the county, we're going to build a mega complex that sits on 70 acres and that's valued at $150 million, a 6 through 12 with a vocational center. On the other side, we're going to build a K through 12 for $20 million. And when I say that if they just listen to start with, I mean transparency is a huge issue. I have FOIA emails from our superintendent in Nicholas County that date all the way back to July 20th of 2016. And just before I get into these emails, I want to give you a little background. Before you can tear a school down, when it comes to rebuilding of schools, it has to meet a 50% threshold. That school has to be assessed at 50% damage of what its value is just to remove that school to start with. Well, if you look back at these emails from July 20th of 2016, we have an email from the superintendent to the members of the board saying that Richwood Middle School is currently assessed at 59% damage. Richwood High School is assessed at 16% damage. And Summersville Middle School is assessed at 22% damage, but that number could change when we add repairs and a mold study. Well, let's fast forward just a few months to August 26, when Richwood High School is now assessed from 16% to 40%. Now, how does that number come about? Well, let me tell you how. Because our superintendent starts sending emails asking, how can we get these numbers up? What can we attach to this building? So let's see if we can attach the football field, those locker rooms, the concession stand, the gymnasium, and the band room, which are all separate structures. This is not a shared facility, separate structures. So finally, we do meet the 50% threshold, and all three schools are destroyed. So we get what we want, but the term comes to, was this done the right way? Was this done the right way? And I think the most disturbing thing is it's really not just looking back at our county board and asking if they did the right thing, but did the federal government do the right thing? I have an email here, and I'm not going to sift through it too, but it came out through the FOIA request, that the gentleman that our county board worked with from FEMA was named Scott. And he sent an email, and in the headline it said, "This is Scott, not FEMA Scott, taxpayer Scott." So we have FEMA officials giving personal information to our county board because they know that they can't do it officially. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, I stood up last year in Education Committee when we had the SBA come in, and I told them, you know, I really just don't trust the process. I don't trust our Board of Education. And one thing they did actually was they sent an email to you, and they sent an email to our education chair at the time, the gentleman from the 48th, saying that the statements I made of not trusting our Board of Education were very misleading, and that basically I shouldn't have the right to say those things. And then to end that email from our superintendent, that you should deal with me accordingly. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to tell you to prepare yourself. You'll probably get another email after today. But it's a travesty, what's happening, really. But the thing is, it's not too late. It's not too late. And this is why I wanted to stand today, because we just got this money. We need to break ground, and as quickly as I want to get these kids in schools, I also want to do the right thing. So here's my outcry to our superintendent, to our county board of education, and to the people of Nicholas County. There's still hope, and there's still time. So just do the right thing. There were 3 schools destroyed, 2 on the eastern side, 1 on the western side. Give us an equal share. Now, when we had site proposals in the eastern side of the county, there was the K through 12 to build onto the existing Cherry River Elementary, and there's also a lumber mill, Collins Hardwood, that was actually just closed down last year about September or October. That's where we want the school. That's where we want it. We want a 6 through 12. Give us our $30 million. We'll let you build your mega dome on the other side of the county. Give us our $30 million and build us a 6 through 12 on the Collins site, and we'll be happy. So here's my outcry. Here's my final plea. Superintendent, Nicholas County Board of Education, do the right thing. Give the people and the kids of Nicholas County what they want and what they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 60th, Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a request for co-sponsors on a piece of legislation I'm offering. It's called the Legislative Staff Protection from Legislator Violence Act. It will clarify Section 17, Article 6 of the Constitution of West Virginia to ensure that we all understand that our immunity that is afforded to us under the Constitution extends only during the period of the session and the 10 days before and after, and that any act that takes place on the House floor or during the legislative session is immune from arrest and prosecution only during those periods of time. The point is, the intent is, to ensure that we all understand that our actions here are still accountable. We are still citizens. This is a citizen legislature. We are citizens. While we're here, we're legislators. It is fitting and good that the people of our districts should be protected from losing their representation during the session. But as soon as the session is over and that 10-day period is passed, Mr. Speaker, we need to be held accountable for our personal actions. I'll be standing right here. I've got 8 more slots available. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, sir.
The gentleman, the 67th, Doug Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to talk about Rockwool for a few minutes. The controversy continues to rage in Jefferson County, and the overwhelming majority of the people of our county still do not want Rockwool. Now, if Rockwool would agree to use something called an electric arc furnace instead of burning coal in a coal-fired furnace right next door to an elementary school, I think a lot of the opposition would melt away. There is another environmental problem which has become more evident in recent months, and that is the stormwater runoff. The Environmental Protection Agency strongly recommends to states that they do not allow construction or factory operations to use ponds for stormwater in karst topography. Now, karst topography is limestone. There are only 2 areas in our state that are significant collections of karst topography. That is all of Jefferson County and eastern Berkeley County, essentially most of it east of Interstate 81, and eastern Greenbrier County. Now, I've talked to the folks at the Department of Environmental Protection, and they seem to think that there's not a whole lot of difference between karst and other forms of topography. They're wrong. Sinkholes open up all the time. There are 17 sinkholes now on the Rockwool property, one of which is under one of their ponds. Now, the interesting thing is, I didn't know this until a week or so ago. In Millwood in Jackson County, there is a competitor to Rockwool making stone wool insulation. It's a subsidiary of Armstrong, which is the same company that owns the hardwood factory plant in Elkins. They use the electric arc furnace. If Rockwool would be willing to A, go to the electric arc furnace, and B, go someplace other than karst topography, I think they would be fine for our state. And I strongly urge them to do so. One more point. The lady from the 65th, Delegate Brown, and I met this past summer with Michael Graney of the Development Office to try and persuade him to back off of supporting Rockwool because it was obvious that the newly appointed Development Authority in Jefferson County didn't want it. What he did not tell us was that 2 months before, the State Economic Development Authority had already voted to do an end around Jefferson County, figuring that the local development authority didn't want it. A, it's wrong to do that to a community, and B, the fact that in that meeting he did not tell us what happened causes me to be skeptical of anything he says. And one other point, and that is Secretary Gaunch was in the meeting, the Secretary of Commerce. I've known Secretary Gaunch for a number of years, and he is absolutely a straight shooter. We talked a week or so ago, and he apologized to me. He says, I did not know that decision had been made. I said, Mr. Secretary, I know it, because I know you're an honest person and a straight shooter. So I just want to make sure that my criticism of the Development Office does not fall off on someone who doesn't deserve it. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 16th, Doug Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that my colleague from the 44th's comments be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Does the chair hear objection? The chair does not hear objection. So ordered. The gentleman, the 16th, Douglas Mant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Excuse me with my voice. It's been a long week. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank our leadership, and I'd like to thank everybody in here for your concerns, your prayers, for your interest in me and my family and what my mother's going through. I had the opportunity to spend some really good time with her and have those kind of talks that you do when things near the end. And I'm grateful that you all gave me that opportunity and understood what I'm going through. You know, our parents take care of us, and it's very gratifying and fulfilling that we have that opportunity most of the time when it's toward the end or too late, but we have that opportunity to do that with our parents. And just to catch you up, I did come back yesterday. She is on a morphine drip, so she's sleeping a lot now, but the main thing is she's comfortable. She's not in any kind of pain. And, you know, I could just feel the sense of angels in the room when I was there because she was comfortable. And when my sister was there and my son came down and my dad, you know, there was just a calmness. And, you know, the angels in that room were you all and our friends at home, keeping us in your thoughts and prayers and sending me messages. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to I wanted to thank all of you, everybody in this room that has reached out to us. It means a whole lot to my family and I, and I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 16th, Douglas Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the heartfelt comments of my colleague, the gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Matt, be recorded in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? The chair hears none. The gentleman, the 16th, Douglas Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like unanimous consent that the comments from the gentleman from the 67th be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. Introduction of guests. The gentleman, the 10th, Douglas Azinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce Roger Conley, who's in the West Gallery. He's the city councilman in Vienna, and I appreciate it if you all give him a warm welcome.
The gentleman, the 28th, Douglas Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am fortunate enough this week to have a Fraser Singleton intern. This is Gemma Tompkins Cox, and she will be with me for the week. So if you all would stop by and introduce yourself to her, I'm sure she would appreciate it. And please help me make her welcome.
The lady from the 4th, Douglas Zukoff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, am lucky enough to have a Fraser Singleton intern. Haley Jones is with me today, and she's a political science major at Marshall University, and she hails from Clay County. Please welcome her and make yourselves available if you have any questions, or let her talk to you this week. Thank you.
She hails from the Chair's Church. The lady from 38th, Douglas Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce my Fraser intern. This is Annika Letley. I hope I said that right. She is from Germany, Stuttgart in particular. And she is here, and she's been in the United States of America for a year now. She is part of the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange, and we're so excited that you're here.
The gentleman, the 16th, Douglas Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to introduce our doc for the day. Mr. Speaker, sponsored by the West Virginia Academy of Family Physicians, our family doctor today is Dr. Andrew Brown of Huntington, West Virginia. Would the House please rise and make him feel welcome?
Are there additional introductions? If none, any miscellaneous business to come before the House? If not, then Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Tuesday.
The lady from the 49th moves that, subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? Lady from the 49th, Doggett Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements. First, bill introduction deadline is a week from Tuesday. You will need to have all bill drafting requests into bill drafting by the close of business this Thursday, unless it's pre-approved. If pre-approved, it will need to be in by the close of business on Friday. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet at 10:45 tomorrow behind the chamber.
Gentlemen of the 10th, I got Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet Tuesday morning at 9:30 in the Finance Committee room. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman of the 27th, I got Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Committee on the Judiciary will reconvene at 3 p.m. today to complete the posted agenda. Also, we'll meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning in room 410, the committee room. And the agenda for that meeting will be posted.
The gentleman of the 13th, Doggett Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet today at 3 p.m. in the Education Committee room. The agenda is posted. Also, Democratic members will caucus with the Chairman and I at 2:15, and Republicans will caucus at 2:35 in the Chairman's office. We will also be meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the Education Committee room.
The gentleman of the 45th, Doggett Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A reminder that your Republican members of your Committee on Government Organization will caucus in the Chairman's office today at 3 p.m. And, Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Government Organization will meet today at 4:15 p.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room, 215 in the East Wing. The agenda is posted.
The gentleman of the 13th, I got Cadle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources will meet at 1 o'clock this afternoon in the Judiciary Committee room, and the agenda has been posted.
The gentleman of the 48th, I got Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock at West Virginia State University, we're going to have the Dick Henderson and Tony Lewis Memorial Legislative Basketball Game. We have some colleagues here in the chamber who are coming out of retirement, going to play some basketball. But the most important thing, and Delegate Scaff and I are going to try to lead this effort, the most important thing is we're raising money tomorrow night for cancer. This is the one night we come into a bipartisan effort, I hope, to have some fun. We hope that everybody can join. I know I have a few colleagues already who have given me money and to pass along. We're going to have a little bit of a Republican and Democrat contest as well to raise money. So hopefully you guys can join and invite others to attend with you. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 12th, I got Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Banking Insurance Committee will meet today at 1 p.m. in the House Government Organization room. The agenda has been posted.
The gentleman of the 10th, I got Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet tomorrow in the House Judiciary Committee room at 4 p.m. The agenda is posted.
The gentleman of the 11th, I got Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small Business and Economic Development Subcommittee for House Bill 2724 will meet at 10:20 Tuesday morning in room 215E. That's Delegates Byrd, Nelson, Scaff, Coles, and Steele. Thank you.
The gentleman of the 3rd, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Tech Caucus will meet Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. Breakfast will be provided in the House Government Org Room. So after I'm done schooling you Tuesday night, playing basketball, come on in Wednesday morning for the Tech Caucus. We're going to be focusing on West Virginia small business innovation. I hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.
Are there further announcements? If not, then the question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Father Brian O'Donnell, Executive Secretary of the Catholic Conference of West Virginia here in Charleston. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the Senator from Pleasants County, Father O'Donnell.
Loving God, send your spirit of wisdom upon the members of this chamber. Make them insightful in what they propose, respectful in dialogue, centered on the common good of all West Virginians. Bless their initiatives regarding children and families, their initiatives combating child hunger, aiding all those touched by the terrible drug crisis, helping those leaving our prisons to find a suitable place as productive members of society. As this session moves on and stress increases, give them health, give them a sense of humor, and let them know how they and their staffs are appreciated as they do their work for the state of West Virginia. And loving Father, bless all West Virginians as we seek to move ahead to achieve a future full of hope. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. The Senator from Pleasants County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would those on the floor and those in the gallery please join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature, Senate Journal, January 31, 2020. The Senate met at 11:11 a.m. Senator Carmichael, Mr. President, in the chair.
The Senator from Ohio County requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized when your name is called. Senate will be in order. Please stand and be recognized when your name is called. As guest of the senior senator from the 16th, we have Austin Willis, Layla Sargent, Michaela Brushwood, and Vivian Vance. And as guest of the junior senator from the 10th, senator from Greenbrier County, we have Alex Huddleston, Braxton Kiefer, and Donnie Carrico. If they would all please stand and the Senate give them a warm welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it's my pleasure and yours to introduce our Doc of the Day. The West Virginia Academy Family Physicians Doc of the Day is Dr. Andrew Brown from Huntington, West Virginia. If you wouldn't mind standing, let Senate give you a warm welcome.
The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seated in the back of the Senate chamber, I would like to introduce Gavin Wilson. He is my Fraser Singleton intern this week, and he's from Webster County. He attends West Virginia Wesleyan College, where he's majoring in English and history. After graduating, he plans to attend law school. Senate, please join me and make him welcome.
The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members of the body, last Friday we had Tracy Hendershot, Dr. Tracy Hendershot here, that is from Wirt in Wood County. He was a Paul Ambrose Fellow. A Paul Ambrose Fellow, if you remember Paul Ambrose died in 9/11 going into the Pentagon in the crash. Paul, at 32 years old, was a revered doctor from Barbersville, West Virginia. He did his undergraduate and his doctor did his MD at Marshall. He was considered to be a rural expert in rural health. And as an honor, we have in Huntington the PATH, the Paul Ambrose Trail for Health. It's a bike pathway that's around Huntington. We also, at the medical school, honored him by doing the Paul Ambrose Fellows. Today we have 2 Paul Ambrose Fellows that will be going around with me, but they'll be meeting with you individually as well. And they are to take the policy side of it. Being a medical doctor, they're now in their residencies and different things like this. Being a medical doctor, they are now positioned to put the policy with the medical side. So that long discussion is an introduction of the 2 Paul Ambrose Fellows that we have in the rear gallery. We have Dr. Ben Wainblatt, and we have Dr. John Apgar. If you could welcome them as they come here.
Further introductions, the senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I have my intern for the week is Farron Gill from Glenville State College, and she studies history and political science. Would you please make her welcome?
Senator from Upshur County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week I have a Fraser Singleton scholar, Matthew Bodner, and he is with Marshall University, political science major, and I don't know why, but he's trying to get into WVU School of Law. But anyway, he's from South Charleston, and please make him welcome.
The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also have a Fraser Singleton intern with us today. She can stand up here in the North Gallery. It's Paige Wantland. She is a sophomore at Western University, a political science major, and she hails from Cincinnati, Ohio. They're studying at WVU, so if the Senate would make her welcome, appreciate it.
Senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have a Fraser Singleton intern, Bailey McKinney from Concord University, and from Camp Creek, Mercer County. If he would stand, the Senate make him welcome.
Senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have an intern here, Ryan McClarity. I hope I pronounced that right, from the University of Charleston in the South Gallery. If the Senate would please make him welcome.
Further introductions? For the senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Jefferson and myself, I'd like to introduce the chaperones of our 4 pages today. We have Melanie Brushwood, along with Britt Sargent, Michelle Vance, and John and Lacey Willis. If they would stand and receive a warm Senate welcome.
Senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored to have with us the father of one of our pages who brought all of our pages here from Mountain View Christian School today. If Mr. James Huddleston will please stand, and the Senate will make him feel welcome.
The senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also have a Fraser Singleton intern. Matthew Porter is from WVU, and he's interested in political science.
The senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I see that also with us, that with Austin Willis, we have not only his parents, but also brother Ian and Olivia, his sister, and also his granddad, David Willis. If they'd stand and receive a warm Senate welcome.
Are there further introductions? Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 2338, allowing the owner of an antique military vehicle to display alternate registration insignia.
Message will be received and referred to the Committee on Military with a second reference to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
House Bill 4179, recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact.
Message be received, referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4359, increasing the filing fees for insurers.
Message will be received, referred to Committee on Banking and Insurance.
House Bill 4381, relating to lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for adopted children.
Message be received, referred to Committee on Natural Resources.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4470, relating to persons 18 years of age or older in the custody of the Bureau of Juvenile Services.
Message be received, referred to Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4476, providing for the timely and efficient collection, submission, testing, retention, and disposition of forensic evidence in sexual assault cases.
Message be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Are there further communications from the House?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 291, requiring PEIA and health insurance providers provide mental health parity, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
Report will be received under the original double committee reference, be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 482, eliminating permit requirement for storing concealed handgun and vehicle on school property for persons over 21, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 620, authorizing Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation approve home plans for inmates, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 625, creating one-day annual license to permit charitable auction of sealed rare, antique, or vintage liquor bottles, and reports back a committee substitute for same. And Senate Bill 629, clarifying alcohol by volume percentage for certain wines, and reports back to committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Joint Resolution 9, amendment authorizing legislature to eliminate or lower ad valorem tax on motor vehicles and any other tangible personal property, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute be adopted, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
That's all I have, sir.
Reports from select committees. The joint resolution will be referred to the Committee on Finance under the bill's original double committee reference. Are there reports from select committees?
No, sir.
Introduction of bills. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 684 through 688 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Junior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 684 through Senate Bill number 688 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 18 by Senator Smith and Seipolt, naming the William Bill Thurman King Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 28 by Senator Tarr, designating February 4th, 2020 as West Virginia Homeschool Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 29 by Senators Takubo, Stallings, and Prezioso, designating February 4th, 2020 as West Virginia Alzheimer's Association Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Are there further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions? Petitions?
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 16, naming the firefighter Marvin Layton Hughes Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 17, naming the United States Marine Corps Private First Class Manuel P. Marcos Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Are there further items under unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 281, removing residency requirement for persons applying for reappointment to Municipal Police Department. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Applicants who wish to serve as municipal police officers are not statutorily required to reside in the municipality. However, if they leave the force and then apply for reinstatement, current code requires them to live in the municipality at the time they reapply. Senate Bill 281 merely amends a single section of the code to remove that residency requirement. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 534, removing workers' compensation exclusion for temporary legislative employees. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 534 amends a single section of the state code. It would amend Chapter 21A, Article 1A, Section 17. Section 17 delineates exclusions from employment. And if the bill is enacted into law, it will strike one of the subdivisions set forth in Section 13 of that bill. C, employees serving on a temporary basis for the legislature during or in support of the legislative session. This bill will, if enacted, essentially reverse a bill that we passed last year. But in the interim, between passage of the bill last year and this year, we have been contacted by the Federal Department of Labor. And contact with the Judiciary Committee came through our State Department of Commerce, and we were advised that we must make this change in order to make our unemployment program, to bring it into compliance with federal law, and that there could be financial consequences to the state if we do not enact this change. I'd be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge the bill's passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 547, relating to employer testing notice, termination, and forfeiture of unemployment compensation. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Similar to the last bill we considered, the committee substitute for Senate Bill 547 is a bill that it has been suggested we must enact to bring our workforce programs into compliance with federal law. This bill would amend a single section of the code. It's in Chapter 21, Article 3E, Section 16. And this is not something that we changed last year, but it is apparently believed that our law, current law, is sufficiently ambiguous about a pretty important question, and that is whether or not an employee has rights to prosecute an appeal and have a review of a decision terminating him or her if he or she has been let go as a result of a positive test for drugs or alcohol. This bill is designed to make it clear that an employee who is terminated under such circumstances enjoys all the rights as any other employee would to have that finding reviewed in the normal appeal process. Be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge the bill's passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Recognize the senator from Harrison County.
Will the gentleman from Morgan yield?
Senator yields. Senator does yield.
Yes.
Senator, I hate to raise again my concerns with this bill that I raised during committee, but to be clear, that if somebody, in a non-commuting situations in the back of the truck drinks a beer and the driver wrecks the truck, that could result in the loss of that passenger, working passenger's workers' comp, even though the beer he drank has nothing to do with his injury, correct?
Well, the bill doesn't address specifically those kinds of situations. It really relates more to the right to have a hearing.
Right, on unemployment.
On unemployment.
Right. I agree, and I appreciate that. I meant to, thank you. Give me a good answer. Thank you.
Certainly.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action to send it to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 552, requiring contracts of $25,000 or more be competitively bid. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 552 raises the value of projects the Water Development Authority must bid out from $2,000 to $25,000. The $25,000 limit puts the Water Development Authority bidding requirements in line with those for public construction contracts and for a number of other state agencies, including municipal public works boards and sanitary districts and boards. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Recognize the senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under Rule 43, I ask to be excused from voting.
In response to your inquiry, in my understanding of your situation, you are considered a member of a class and therefore will be required to vote. Your inquiry is properly placed. Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 4103, relating to Office of Drug Control Policy. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4103 relates to the Office of Drug Control Policy. The bill changes the supervision of the Office of Drug Control Policy, the ODCP. Although the ODCP will stay within the DHHR, it will now be under the direction and supervision of the DHHR Secretary with assistance by the State Health Officer, as opposed to previously supervision from the State Health Officer. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 240 requiring hotels and restaurants secure manhole covers of certain grease traps. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 267 creating offenses of conversion or leased or rented personal property. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Ehlenfeld moved to amend the bill on page 1, section 16A, line 3, after the word willfully by inserting the words and knowingly, and on page 1, section 16A, line 8, after the word willfully by inserting the words and knowingly.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment. Is there discussion? The senator from Ohio County.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd request unanimous consent to address the amendment that's before this body.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I'm just asking with this amendment to add the words "and knowingly." The reason I'm offering that, Mr. President, is because there is a difference between the terms of willfully and knowingly. I understand in judiciary there's a discussion about that particular issue, and looking at some of the case law in West Virginia, it appears that our Supreme Court has made the distinction between those terms, and that's been my experience over the years in handling cases that require, the prosecutions that require proving both of those elements. Specifically, I would refer to State versus Norma Jean Saunders, which was a case from 2006, an opinion authored by Justice Albright, in which Justice Albright opined that there is a difference between knowingly and willfully, and specifically, Justice Albright found in that case that willful conduct is conduct that was intentionally engaged in and violated the law. Then he went on to say that knowingly is different and requires the additional element of demonstrating that the defendant was consciously aware when engaging in the illegal conduct and the conduct that violated the law. So there is a difference. It's a little higher standard. In doing a search through some legal databases, I found 704 examples of the use of the word knowingly in various criminal statutes. Many of those statutes also include willfully and knowingly. The reason that's important is because most of the people who would be convicted under this statute would be convicted of a felony, which is a serious offense subject to time in the penitentiary. Also, when you're convicted of a felony, you forfeit a wide variety of rights. And so I think for purposes of fairness, for purposes of being consistent with hundreds of other West Virginia statutes, for purposes of having the appropriate cognitive requirement for this type of an offense, I think it's important that this amendment be adopted. This is a statute, I know we'll talk more about it tomorrow, that causes someone to be held accountable for a criminal offense if they rent a piece of personal property and they fail to return the property at the end of that agreement. I think it's important that we add that term knowingly to be fair to all parties involved, and I don't think it creates an unreasonable burden for prosecutors or an unreasonable burden of proof. They deal with that element every day in statutes involving crimes against property and many other crimes. And so I certainly will take questions, but I would urge adoption of this amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Senator from Morgan County.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We did have in the Judiciary Committee some discussion of the elements of the offense, willfully and knowingly. I don't think the committee considered an amendment to change the elements of the offense. There are some who would contend that willfully subsumes knowingly, but on the chance that it may not, it certainly does no harm to the bill, and I have no opposition to the amendment offered by my distinguished colleague from Ohio County.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senator from Ohio County. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 308, creating criminal penalties for violation of orders issued for protection of victims of financial exploitations.
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Bill 510, making permanent land reuse agency or municipal land bank's right of first refusal on certain tax sale properties. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 511, regulating pawnbrokers. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Lindsay moved to amend the bill
The
on
junior
page
senator
5.
from the 8th.
Yes, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment adds a new section to Senate Bill 511. The section would be 4726-4 and would require pawnbrokers to maintain a database with a third-party vendor in order to keep track of transactions. Such a database would facilitate investigations into alleged stolen property. The reason for this amendment is we heard powerful testimony in Judiciary Committee from a fellow that rents property out, I think hardware if I'm not mistaken, and an individual from the Kanawha County Sheriff's Department. The small business owner said he puts his own stamp of his business name on hardware, and yet it shows up at pawn shops and no one tracks it. No one reports it as stolen property. So a database requiring a pawnbroker to use a third-party vendor database in order to track these transactions would lead to investigations of that stolen property. And that's what the Kanawha County Sheriff's Department said as well. This is a common sense legislation to address a real problem with stolen property sold by pawnbrokers. So I'd ask adoption of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. When the Judiciary Committee considered this legislation, we did have some discussion and actually some testimony from witnesses who appeared before the committee regarding the existence of this or similar databases. The committee did not consider this amendment during its deliberations and consideration of the bill, and so to me, it is a policy question for the Senate, and I offer no opposition to the amendment.
Further discussion? Recognize the senior senator from the 6th.
Will the senator from Kanawha yield?
Junior senator from the 8th yield. Senator does yield.
Yes.
Will this place a financial burden on the pawn shops, or will this database be entirely within the officers, the police department?
According to the amendment, a pawnbroker may charge law enforcement agencies for access to the database.
The pawnbroker may charge the police department?
Yes. So I guess any expense on the part of pawnbrokers can be made up for the charging of access by law enforcement. As I understand it, there are some pawnbrokers who already carry this expense in their daily business because there are already third-party vendors. I'm thinking one had something to do, I think it's called leads.com, wherein there are some pawnbrokers who already put this information out there so that law enforcement can track stolen property.
The way I understood it, the law enforcement subscribes to the leads database, and that allows the law enforcement to search that with no cost to the pawnbroker. I just want to make sure that pawnbrokers were not doing something that will cause them financial burden. So
that's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question for the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the junior senator from the 8th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Joint Resolution 7, preserving the separation of powers amendment. Second reading of the resolution.
Are there amendments to the resolution?
No, sir.
Not. Resolution will be engrossed, advanced to third reading.
Engrossed House Bill 4496, removing the specific mandate of the Board of Risk and Insurance Management to purchase liability insurance for the Division of Corrections. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members of the Senate. The senior senator from the 15th, under remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, everybody can see on your desk where I put out, or the Finance Committee has put out the budget report for the month of January. And I wanted to go over that real quickly with you. And I don't know how many questions I can answer. We just got this done right before I got on the floor. But the general revenue collections for the month of January was just about $437.5 million, exceeding the monthly estimate of $424.5 million, so to the tune of about $13 million. Now, these numbers come with some caveats. First of all, on January the 9th, the governor lowered the January estimate by $6 million from the original estimate of $430 million. Additionally, on January the 13th, the state treasurer transferred, and this is one-time money, of $20 million into the state's general revenue fund. So that had to be factored in with this as well. So then the adjusted revenues for January would have been $417.5 million, which would have actually fallen $13 million below the estimates from which we originally started out at. We've made some ground up over the past few months, but collections are now only $20 million to $20.4 million below the estimated revenue collections for the year. And I'd like to draw your attention to the personal income tax. The personal income tax collections was down just under $2 million. Sales tax was above estimates of $1.2 million. And then severance tax was below just under $1 million at $834,000 on that. Now, there's one other aspect to this. Excuse me for 1 second. That I'd like to bring everybody's attention to. And it's back on the rainy day fund side. It's next to the last page on your sheet here. And when you look at rainy day funds A and B, there's $850.3 million in that fund. And last year at this time, it would have been $718 million. And so that's $132 million increase. And the reason I bring that up, because the rainy day fund, for lack of a better term, because you've heard me say this on the floor before, but the severance tax roller coaster that we seem to be on, and right now it's down. The prices of energy is down. The rainy day fund helps provide a smoothing mechanism for that. And so when I'm given these other numbers here that aren't necessarily the best, but they're not necessarily the worst either, when you look at the fact that we're $132 million over this time last year, and keeping in mind that I think it was, forgive me, I could be wrong on this, I think we put in about $56 to $57 million in our last legislative session. It was the third largest appropriation to the rainy day fund that we ever had. But then you can factor in the other $75 million has come from the investment side of the rainy day fund. So once again, the Investment Management Board and the stock market has done us fairly well at that point. So I just wanted to give everybody an update. I tried I know there's always been a lot of turmoil about me getting these things on your desk, but we try to get them out as soon as we can, as long as we know that they're as close to being accurate, and these are preliminary numbers as well. But I wanted to share it with the members so that you had it, whether you're on the Finance Committee or not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? Recognize the senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the Chairman of Finance, I certainly appreciate your staff's diligence in providing the members here in the body a monthly update. I think it's commendable, and I want to commend you for that. And both of us haven't had a time to digest exactly what's in there, so I can appreciate, where you're coming from on that. But, as we look at the information before us, it's amazing. We don't print money, but the governor can play around with the estimates any way he wants to. And as the chairman had presented to us, if it wasn't for the $6 million of lowering the revenue estimates for January, and the gift from the treasurer of $20 million, which are one-time money, which totals $26 million, we would then deduct our current dilemma in January, and we'd be $13 million below revenue estimates. So it's amazing the governor in the state of the states, painted a very rosy picture, but yet when we see the numbers, it's a totally different story. And if you look down at the bottom of the page, you'll see that in looking at the general revenue, it says the current trends put the state not on track for meeting the yearly revenue estimates. And as we go through, as the chairman mentioned, he went through the numbers for personal income tax, and the little caveat at the bottom of the page says not on track for meeting the personal income tax, not on track for meeting consumer and sales tax, not on track for severance tax. So we've got to be very careful. I know we're building budgets now. We're looking, at $100 million for the intermediate court. We're looking at the inventory tax of $100 million. We're talking about the vehicle tax, elimination of the vehicle tax, $150 million. It doesn't make sense. And if we don't balance this budget and come up with a realistic figure, we're probably in for some trouble. And the governor even went far enough in his general revenue estimates to look up into April, which I don't know that I've ever seen this before, but he's lowered the revenue estimates by $16.5 million. He lowered the January estimates by $6 million, and then the April estimates by $10.5 million. I mean, evidently, he knows that this budget is not growing, and he's taking steps to sort of paint, I don't know if it's voodoo economics or creative accounting, but it certainly doesn't, the general revenue budget doesn't seem what it should be. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks? Senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, excuse me. I got to say, it's kind of timely that this discussion came up, because having looked through the handout from the Finance Committee, it certainly looks like we're going to be in the hole again this year. At least my quick math and my accounting background tells me that. And I wonder why that is. You'll find on your desk in front of you something I received last week from some of our seniors. Came into my office from the silver-haired legislature. And they wanted to let me know what the priorities were for our seniors in West Virginia for this upcoming session. And take a look at it. Going down, they would like to see an increase in the oil and gas severance tax, encouraging solar power development, making it illegal to discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender. Actually, that one failed, excuse me. Legalizing cannabis for medical use, increasing funding for senior in-home care, traffic safety responsibility, it goes on and on. And, a lot of those come before us and never get anywhere. And when you see where we're headed financially, you have to ask yourself why. You've got to remember, we're one of the oldest states in the country. There's reasons for that. We have obviously don't do a very good job of keeping our young people here because we're an energy state, and when we go down, people leave, and when we go back up, we don't get nearly all of them back. We have a lack of a diversified economy. We have a lack of education opportunities for our young people and workers. We don't have a lot of flat land, which none of us can do a lot about. But we can do something about the other ones. And the seniors seem to focus on those very issues because this is a great state to retire in. It's a low cost of living, great people. We could attract seniors that would help our economy. But look at our major goals this session. Intermediate Court of Appeals. I've yet to meet anybody outside the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that thinks that's a good idea or worthwhile. We want to eliminate the business personal property tax without a real substantive replacement, which will devastate our counties, devastate our public schools, devastate the services they provide, like running senior centers and emergency squads and law enforcement. It'll devastate our public education. You know, I've seen numbers that we've lost 57,000 people since 2015 when you all got the majority. Not blaming you, but we got to see if our policies shouldn't be revisited to see what it's going to take to get 57,000 people back and maybe more. We can only get on track if we work together. What we've had, with all due respect, is 6 years of one-sided legislation. Sure, we sneak a bill in every now and then. We get a little input every now and then, but you're the majority. That's how it's supposed to be. But I remember when this side of the aisle was in charge of this body, it seemed to me like the Republicans were in on every conversation, were in on every meeting. Their voices were always heard. Let's put the goals of these seniors, who've seen a lot more than a lot of us, with a few exceptions, first. Let's start putting West Virginians first instead of the big corporations and the out-of-state benefactors. Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of things that I wanted to address here. When I was looking through this, what the Committee on Finance provided, it talks about the state transferring a total of $20 million to general revenue. And I think that one of the things that kind of I thought was interesting about that was that it was a contribution or a donation from the state treasurer to our general revenue. But this is the taxpayers' money. If this isn't money that a department isn't utilizing to run their department, to run their office, then it's not theirs to graciously provide back to the citizens of West Virginia to help run our budget. It's our money to begin with that we need to provide funding for all the things that we've talked about in this room. And so I think that we should stop characterizing these kinds of things as being the beneficiaries of someone's good graces and providing money back to the citizens of West Virginia. But also, I want to touch on something that the senator from Harrison was talking about, actions of this legislature to devastate county budgets and devastate the services that counties provide. We had the resolution that the senator from Harrison was talking about in Judiciary last Thursday, I believe, Senate Resolution 9. And during the entire debate on that, Mr. President, I had never been in a committee meeting where we spent so much time talking about something that wasn't on the agenda. And that's what we spent the entire time talking about. This resolution, at the very outset, says, notwithstanding any other provisions of this Constitution, the legislature may, by general law, do one or the more of the following. And then it lists things: exempt one or more species of tangible personal property, reduce the rate of taxation or assessment, establish different statewide rates of taxation, and the last is classify property as real property or personal property for the purposes of ad valorem property taxation. Nowhere in there does it say the legislature shall, or that the legislature will in the upcoming session or in the current session. What that resolution was is a discussion and it starts the ball rolling, that if future legislatures or this legislature chooses to do something, we may on taxation. Doesn't mean we will, doesn't mean that there's a set plan to do so. But yet, that's what we're talking about, is that we're going to devastate counties. We're going to devastate the taxation, devastate the school system by that action. And that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a resolution that would then go to the people of this state to vote on whether or not they want to amend the Constitution to give the legislature future authority to do so. I looked at prior constitutional amendments, and back in the early 1900s when they established a judicial pay system, and it said the legislature may establish the salaries. It didn't say what they were going to establish them at, but I wonder if the conversation back then was, I guarantee a future legislature gives these judges such high pay raises that they're going to bankrupt the state. When in fact, we're sitting here today with a judicial pay system that ranks 53rd in the nation. We're below all the states and territories that we include in that roll call. So, Mr. President, I think that we just need to keep track of what we have before us. And what we have before us is a constitutional amendment that then allows the future legislature to have a discussion, or this legislature, should that amendment ever pass. There's nothing that says that this is going to happen. There's nothing in here that says we plan on devastating the finances of counties and boards of education. So Mr. President, I want to keep us focused on what we're discussing and what we have in front of us here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Before I recognize Senator from Harrison for a second time. Further remarks by members? The Senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I'll tell you something else that I think that we should make sure that we keep our eye on. The difference between actual serious legislation and trying to fool the public. See, a lot of these bills that are coming out that require a 2/3 vote, in my opinion, it appears to me like that y'all know it's not going to happen because we're not going to allow it. And then when it's over, we're going to stand up and say, we tried to do these things, and the daggone Democrats wouldn't vote and let it. And here's the reason I feel this way. You guys have said constantly, Mr. President, that you will not do this until you have a plan. Well, where's the plan? We've not had one meeting to even discuss the plan. And now we come up with another one to reduce people's taxes because it sounds good. My question is, are we seriously wanting dialogue about these issues? Or are we just having a political stunt here, knowing that the Democrats will do the right thing and not allow something this silly to happen? But if we're actually serious about it, then let's start having meetings. Let's start talking about what the plan is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further remarks before I recognize the junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, one thing I think that we can know how to expect, if we look at what we've done year after year, decade after decade in West Virginia, we can know what to expect going forward in the years to come and decades to come. We have to change what we do in West Virginia to create jobs. That's what this is about. We can look at things that, I noticed one of the things that was mentioned here is going in and increasing a severance tax. And if you look in that revenue report, the severance tax is down. And it's that roller coaster, we rode it for a really long time. We see when our severance industry does well, West Virginia does well, and I agree with that. We have got to diversify, and the talk has been, and it's just been talk for years and years and years, and real action has yet to be taken to diversify that economy and get off that volatility that we experience with severance tax. So giving the legislature the ability to actually put it on the ballot, so if we vote to actually put it on the ballot to let the people of West Virginia decide whether or not West Virginia needs to be more nimble than we are now in such a rapidly changing economy, or do we stick to the Titanic we've been on where we can't steer it at all? Because I can tell you the direction it's went, going on the history of just depending on a severance tax and increasing it, which will eventually drive it down even more. That's simple economics. Tax it more, you get less. Is not the way to go. We've got to get the flexibility to be able to steer this ship around and be a more nimble state. We have 1.8 million people here in West Virginia. We're one of the smaller states in the Union. We're one of the least nimble. This amendment lets the people of West, should we put it on the ballot, should the legislature vote to put this on the ballot, it gives the people of West Virginia the ability to decide whether or not West Virginia needs to be a more nimble state, and should the legislature have that ability to facilitate that nimbleness. So this doesn't devastate counties. That fear tactic is not something that we should be sending out to the state. What this does is it helps give those counties who are on that volatile track possibly the ability to get some level funding, to get some security. Because what happens right now, as I can guarantee you, is that one of the taxes we're looking at with the inventory manufacturing equipment, one thing it does do is that it helps prevent any of those manufacturing jobs from improving in those counties. Being from a county that has some manufacturing, I want to see them succeed. So I would love to give them the opportunity to vote on an amendment that maybe allows us to do that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks, the junior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This tax has been talked about obviously for some time, and I think everyone on this side of the aisle has always said we're open to discussions. We just want to know how to pay for it. The people of West Virginia should know who's going to pay for it, because at the same Judiciary Committee meeting, Mr. Mukus admitted that should there be a tax reduction on machinery and heavy equipment, it would be made up with an increase on income taxes, consumption taxes, and personal property. So that is part of the discussion. It may not be want to be talked about by certain folks, but that is part of the discussion. And if you want the people of West Virginia to know what we're talking about, they need to know what the plan is and who's going to pay for it. All too often, individuals end up paying for it. All too often, lower classes of folks end up paying for it. The poor end up paying for it. That's a valuable discussion to have, and we're open for it. It's just as the senator from Braxton County said, there needs to be a plan, and that's all we're asking for. Let's have a frank discussion of who's going to pay for it. Thank you.
Further remarks? Before I recognize the senator from Harrison. Senator from Harrison for a second time.
Kind of opened up a can of worms here, but I think it exposes the confusion and the controversy that is being brought up by two bills. There's two bills out there. There's one to get rid of industrial personal property taxes, and there's one to wipe out all personal property taxes. And whether it be devastating to the counties or not, you know, I mean, I think that's pretty plain as the nose on your face. One estimate I saw was $540 million. Who's going to replace that? But you know, you've heard me say 100 times since I've been in this body, those who fail to know history are doomed to repeat it. And there's a reason why property taxes that fund our county and municipal governments is in the Constitution. And you know why? Because they didn't want us to get our hands on it. They didn't want us to control their budgets. They didn't want us to be able to punish them if they didn't go in the direction this body wanted them to go in, no matter who was in control. That's why it's in the Constitution. That's why simply taking it out of the Constitution to give us flexibility really isn't flexibility at all, because you wouldn't take it out unless you intended to get rid of it. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, I don't know if all of your team is on your Facebook page, because I read a Facebook post by you last week that said we're going to lower or get rid of the personal property tax. So that is the goal. And no disrespect to you, that's your goal. I understand what it is. I disagree. This side of the aisle disagrees, because no matter how good it sounds politically, we're not going to back something that's going to devastate our county governments, our public schools, and our municipal governments without a solid plan to replace it. You know, I tried to put an amendment on the SRJ that passed out, SRJ 9, that simply said that if you're going to lower property taxes, personal property taxes, you have to have a replacement for those revenues to the counties, municipalities, and school boards. It failed on party lines. So we can sit here and tell each other that we're just trying to give ourselves flexibility, but the reality is we know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what the result will be, and if we do it, we know that we will bankrupt many of our counties and local school districts. I ask that we work together. I've asked that many times. It's probably the 5th time I've asked. As my friend from Braxton said, we've had no meetings. We've had no discussions. And maybe there isn't a solution. Maybe you've already explored them all and there is no fix to replace it, because that's a possibility too. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to let the record show, in terms of the conversation that's gone on so far this morning, which side of the aisle is for cutting the taxes of the citizens of West Virginia, and which side of the aisle is against cutting the taxes for the citizens of West Virginia, for the manufacturers of West Virginia, and so on. My friend from Harrison said just a minute or two ago that our state's problem, one of our state's problems economically, is that we're tied to energy. If energy's down, jobs are down. If energy's up, jobs are up. I can think of few, if any, taxes that are better to cut that would help that problem than the machinery and inventory tax, the personal property tax also. There is really nothing better than that. We're talking about systemic change throughout the state that is transformative. This is a big deal. And I want to thank you personally, Mr. President, for having the vision to bring forward the idea of getting rid of this tax. This is what great states do. Let's face it, economically, we're not a great state. But that should be our vision, and that should be our goal, and that should be our direction, and we cannot do that without getting rid of this tax. This is the most prohibitive tax in the state. It needs to go. And I just hope our friends on the other side of the aisle will consider coming on board with this and taking part of the credit along with this, because this is a big deal. This is a big deal, and I just want to make those points. And we need to steady ahead and make this thing happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Further remarks. The senior senator from the 5th.
I was not going to get up, but I wish it was as simple as everybody's laying it out to be. But what I heard from the finance chair is the responsibility that we've had in the past has led us to be able to balance the budget in the last 4 or 5 years. The fact that we had the vision to do a rainy day fund, that we had the fiscal integrity to establish that and hold ourselves to that, the fact that we inherited budgets from the 80s into the 90s that were deficit and going in the wrong direction, the fact that we established and paid off and are in the process of paying off our pension liabilities, the fact that we put forth a pension plan that allows us to do stock and equities where we had never done. We're one of the last 3 states to do that. So we can talk about all this stuff about all this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. I'll just go and just say this. Go look at the past and see how fiscally responsible we've been in addressing the issues of this state. And don't start trying to put someone in this column or that column. We did that collectively. We did that in a manner of bringing everybody to the table. This is something that I was very fortunate. The senator from Morgan and I came in the same time. He on the House and me in the Senate. And Gaston Caperton would bring you down and talk about these things and bring people in to experts from all different areas and say, hey, this is a problem we have, we better address it. And collectively, we did. So don't try to make this very simplistic in saying this is growth or non-growth. No, this is about how the future of our state goes, and we've got to be responsible in our actions. Thank you.
Further remarks? Further remarks? The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to say that I was in the Judiciary Committee when the discussion was taking place, and I think that I would completely agree with my friend from Wayne in that we can talk about doomsday scenarios, but what I actually heard Mr. Mukal say is that ultimately it's always the individuals that pay every tax in every state. It always comes down to the individuals, and all we're looking for is a means of having all the tools in the toolbox to be able to readjust those taxes to best benefit the citizens of West Virginia. If it means you can't touch the inventory tax, you can't touch it. But if things can be moved around where everybody in the state can benefit from more jobs, and one of the things I heard in that meeting was that we're having to make all these exceptions. All the big new factories, all the big things we've had to give pilot programs. Well, obviously it's working, or else why are we continuing to give pilot programs to get these new people in here? And the way I would look at that, what about our existing manufacturers then here? Why is it fair that they continue to pay a tax that we're making all these exceptions to get new business? If we didn't need that, why do we need the pilot program? So I'm not saying we can get rid of the inventory tax. You know, I appreciate the comments that I've heard on the floor today, but the reality is whether Republicans are in charge, Democrats are in charge, whoever is driving the ship at the time has to be fiscally responsible. Nobody, whether it be a Republican majority or a Democrat majority or an independent majority someday, is going to do anything, I am sure, to devastate children or counties or anything. And so all that we are trying to do in this current legislature is try to give more tools in the toolbox so that we can best move things around so that everybody benefits. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Miscellaneous business, the senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I filed a voting sentiment with the clerk.
Clerk will read the voting sentiment.
Had Senator Stallings been present in the chamber on Friday, January 31st, 2020, he would have voted yea on the passage of the following bills: Senate Bill 449, Senate Bill 550, Senate Bill 642.
Senator from Boone County.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that my voting sentiment be recorded in the journal as reported.
Without objection, so ordered. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee on the judiciary will meet this afternoon at 3:00 p.m. in 208 West Wing.
Further announcements? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Committee will meet this afternoon in room 451M at 3 p.m. and the agenda's been posted.
Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Military will be meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. in room 208 West. The agenda has been posted.
Further announcements? Further announcements. The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Banking and Insurance will meet today at 2 p.m. in room 451A.
The senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure will meet tomorrow morning at 9:30 in room 451M. The agenda has been posted.
Further announcements? Further announcements? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.